welcome to this new endeavor that is going to be a joint venture between CUTV and our good friends at Frostburg State University. My name is Gary Smith, and I'm going to bring in Colin Kirkwood, who is Colin, tell everybody what you're doing down there in Frostburg.
Well, ever since August of this year, I'm the brand new sports broadcaster on the road and at home, just like CUTV, but different team, different colors.
And with Colin and myself talking, we're like, this would be a great little time to reach across the Allegheny Mountains and bring everybody up to speed weekly on what's going on in the region, because there's a lot of good football going on in the Atlantic region.
Yeah, two people who've seen probably the most, if not a lot, of Division II football, and they know a lot of things over the past couple of years. So it only makes sense that we're doing this.
And just as a reminder for people out there not familiar with what makes up the actually Super Region, Atlantic region is basketball and other sports. But
we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. A few more months. It'll be soon. But Super Region 1 is made up by the PSAC, the Mountain East, the Northeast 10, and the GMAC. So without further ado, I'm going to look through. We're going to break down what was going on in the PSAC through this part of the season. We have the standings right now, as you see on the screen. The PSAC, Shepherd and Shippensburg, the lone 3-0 teams in the PSAC East. But you have East Stroudsburg, Kutztown, Westchester, all right there, 2-1, and then Bloomsburg, Lockhaven, and Millersville. But Colin, always Shepherd is going to be at the top of that PSAC East, and they were picked to be the preseason number one in the PSAC East.
I feel like a lot of people actually chose to not talk about their matchup last week against Indiana. I mean, that's about two powers as great of an early season game as you can get to really see what kind of team you're going to be able to put together early in the season. And Shepherd they have themselves a field day. I haven't heard a whole lot about it, but I feel like it was definitely one you had to see to believe.
Well, Shepherd went on the road to IUP, and like you said, that's basically could be a playoff preview, at the very least maybe a PSAC championship preview, and Shepherd got out early. IUP scored late to make the score a little bit more respectable, but Shepherd was in complete control. Now switching over to the PSAC West, there are only two undefeateds through the first non-conference or non-divisional part of the schedule. Cal U and Slippery Rock both 3-0. Then Seton Hill surprising at 2-1. IUP 1-1, and then Gannon, Mercyhurst, Edinburgh, and Clarion rounding out the PSAC West. But Colin, like we've seen for years, Cal, Slippery Rock, and IUP are usually going to be the teams that are going to be 1, 2, 3 in the West.
All three of them are going to beat up on each other throughout this entire season, and they've got a couple of tough draws. I believe it's Indiana, if I know correctly about their schedule, that they're going to draw Cal and Slippery Rock in back-to-back weeks, if I can remember my schedule correctly. That's going to be tough for them. If they really want to show out, they're going to need to probably at least split in that regard if they want to try to move forward and secure some spots within the region.
Well, that's going to be a lot to digest coming in the next coming weeks, as the PSAC will be starting divisional play next week, or this week actually. But Colin, let's take a look at your new stomping grounds, the MEC, and on this graphic, a team that you might know a little bit about is in the top spot in the MEC.
Yeah, Frostburg State has been fantastic so far to open the season. If you're a fan of old-fashioned football, you're really going to love what they're doing down here. A lot of ground and pound, and they're really going to attack first down. They've got two great backs that are really capable of really pushing up and down, left and right, however you want to do it. Senior Gavin Labatt, number 44, is fantastic. He's a downhill runner, gets ahead of steam going. It's just like trying to tackle a Coke machine. It's not easy. And then he has a sub that'll come in occasionally as well, and they'll go 1A, 1B, Malcolm Facey, also just that same kind of style, and they wear you down. I've seen a lot of teams that come in with great rushing defense to this point in time. They get cut down. They really struggle to tackle these guys once the fourth quarter hits, but there's going to be a couple of very important games in the Mountain East coming up here within the next few weeks.
We're looking at these MEC standings. You see Frostburg State, Notre Dame, UNC Pembroke up at the top, but I'm having to put my future goggles on, but I believe that Frostburg and Notre Dame is going to be a very important game towards the end of the season.
It's going to be an important one in October. Of course, Notre Dame will host that one, so Frostburg will gear up and head on up to Euclid, Ohio for that one. It'll be a noon kickoff at that point in time. But what I'm really looking forward to is next week. UNC Pembroke makes their way up from North Carolina here to Bobcat Stadium, which we're currently seated in right now if you're watching at this point in time, and they'll be here for a 1 o'clock kickoff. Currently slated in the top three at this point in time. That will be a very important one for both of these teams. UNC was originally picked at the 4 spot in the preseason, and they're sitting pretty right now. They're looking to try to make a difference.
I tell you what, you're underselling Bobcat Stadium a little bit. As a beautiful facility in Frostburg, so it's one of the best places to watch a college football game. Any division right now is just located right off I-68, and you got yourself a nice Nice setup there, Colin. But let's keep moving to another setup that we both know familiar, or pretty familiar. You've done the trip twice to the Northeast 10 territory. I did it once. But Northeast 10, there's a lot of craziness going on in the Northeast 10 this year. Not really a clear-cut number one, but American International, Bentley are 3-0, and then Southern Connecticut State 2-1. But as we saw firsthand, every week in the NEC or the Northeast 10 is just a war, and you don't know what's going to happen.
Bentley surprised a lot of people. They had an opening game matchup against Westchester, and they pretty much blew them out of the water in that one. It wasn't very close for the majority of that one. So I really think that may be a team to watch out for. I know American International made the trip to Millersville, and they played them as well. So a little bit of common ground here. We've seen them not that long ago back on Saturday. But Bentley could be a surprise. You never know.
And on the graphics here, you're seeing the standings right now. Southern Connecticut are 2-1, and Assumption, both playoff teams in the past, and Assumption playoff team not in the too distant past. So
they had another matchup that was interesting. Every year they play Kutztown. Every other year up there, down there, and Kutztown took care of business in the first week, but they've kind of fallen off since the preseason.
Yeah, and this is a team that going towards the end of the season of playoffs, you figure one team's going to get in, but if things break differently in other conferences, there could be a two-team region. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and talk about November football. We're still at the end of September football. And let's talk about another conference that you actually got to see firsthand a few weeks ago in Owensboro, Kentucky, the GMAC.
Yeah, it's a really interesting conference. There's a lot of different teams, and just the way things are stacking up right now, I don't think anybody at this point in time saw Lake Erie getting off to the start that they have right now. Lake Erie normally has been known to be towards the bottom of the conference, and they're really starting to make somewhat of a push here. But we've seen it before. I mean, Cal traveled to Ohio Dominican, and they had that series a couple of years ago, a home and home. Very difficult team to try to go against, normally one that's picked to make an appearance in the Super Region playoffs throughout the years. But still, it's kind of a break. I do know in the department for Findlay that they did bring UNC Pembroke in after UNCP had lost 2 games in a row due to COVID-19 cancellations. They had gotten 2 forfeit wins. Of course, their opener against Winston-Salem State was canceled, and then West Virginia Wesleyan was their Week 2 opponent that they didn't end up playing because Wesleyan had issues in that department. So Findlay got a hold of them and said, hey, we'll take you on. And it was a great contest. Findlay got the win. It was an overtime loss for the Braves of UNCP, but still a very, very interesting one to see who measures up where.
Well, I tell you what, if you look, as we're looking at the standings right now, like you said, it's a little bit of a surprise to see Lake Erie number one, not a team that has been traditionally a powerhouse in Super Region 1. But you see Tiffin, Findlay, and Ohio Dominican, 3 teams with playoff pedigrees. And I tell you what, that story just told about Findlay and Pembroke. That's good for Findlay for taking that game on, because it's not like they were asking they were inviting a team that was a pushover, and that that UNCP team is a legit team. So once again,
Tiffin's got a pretty interesting matchup coming up here this week that I think a lot of people are going to be keeping their eye on. I think it's going to be referred to as a measuring stick kind of game. If I remember correctly, they will be squaring off against Truman this week, and I've heard a lot of national media talk about that one and how this could be an important one for the Dragons. So you'll have to keep an eye on that, because that right now appears to be the favorite for the GMAC in terms of playoff positioning at this point in time.
Well, my friend, let's take a look at the GMAC schedule right now. Non-conference, apparently, from what it looks like all over this menagerie of a graphic that we have over here. Lindenwood will be going to Findlay. William Jewell will be going to Kentucky Wesleyan. Quincy versus Ashland, which should be a great game. Quincy's a team that is always a national powerhouse or a national reputation in a lot of sports. Ohio Dominican at Indianapolis. McKendree at Walsh. Missouri S&T at Hillsdale, and Southwest Baptist at Lake Erie. But Colin, let's see what is going on in your neck of the woods in the MEC.
Yeah, just browsing the schedule. I mean, there's a couple of interesting key matchups to take a look at. Just really circle with your marker, pen, whatever it is that you have. Of course, Charleston's going to look for a bounce-back contest. They'll be traveling down the road, actually up the road for them, to AB, and AB struggling a lot this year. And, I mean, obviously it should be a comfortable win for the Golden Eagles, but still they're looking to get back on track after losing the heartbreaker here at Bobcat Stadium last week on Thursday in double overtime to the Bobcats. But another one that really has caught my eye on this schedule to watch is West Virginia State and Notre Dame. And West Virginia State really gave Frostburg a lot of trouble in the early part of the first half of that game. And it might not seem like a big matchup on your schedule, but 12 p.m. from Euclid. It's going to be an interesting one. They could challenge if they get together and they get rolling on the same page and West Virginia State's offense gets going and stays going. That's been their issue to this point in time. They'll get going for the first half, gain a lot of yards, really put some pressure on, but they kind of falter in the second half. They struggled a lot. They went up 10-0 against Shippensburg on the road, and then they just let go of that one. They couldn't hold on to it. But they can find a way to put together a full 4 quarters. It's going to be an interesting one. And Notre Dame could be in trouble.
And mark that down. Make sure you check your tabs and keep track of that this coming weekend. Let's move over to the Northeast 10, all-conference games up in the Northeast 10. Bentley versus American International. Franklin Pierce at St. Anselm, a stadium we know well. Assumption at Stonehill, and then Southern Connecticut at New Haven. And, I don't even know if there's a game that I would say would be go out of my way and watch. I'd watch all these because, like we mentioned a little bit ago, the Northeast 10, you never know what's going to happen week to week. So just keep track of all these. But maybe that Assumption Stonehill game, because Assumption, as we said, recent as 2016-17 in the NCAA playoffs, and Stonehill, a team that came into the PSAC earlier this season and got a win on the road. So I would say let's mark that game down as the one to watch.
That sounds like a plan to me.
Now let's move over finally to the PSAC. And Colin, as I mentioned a little bit ago, this is the first weekend of divisional play in the PSAC, and a lot of good games. We'll start in the PSAC West. Cal at Edinburgh, Clarion at Gannon, IUP at Mercyhurst, Slippery Rock at Seton Hill, and then going to the other side of the Susquehanna River, Kutztown at Shepherd, Bloomsburg at Ship, Westchester at Millersville, East Stroudsburg at Lock Haven. I think, Colin, conference-wide, I would say the game to watch is probably that Kutztown at Shepherd game.
Yeah, if Kutztown really wants to come back and establish themselves thinking towards the postseason again this year, they're really going to need a bounce-back performance here after the way they struggled a bit towards the beginning of the open of this season. If they can somehow find a way to take Shepherd down on the road, that would be huge, a massive resume booster. So we'll see if they can find a way to get that done. But I'll also be keeping my eye on Seton Hill. That could be a very interesting one because Seton Hill gave Kutztown some fits in their game. So, I mean, you never know. They maybe could challenge Slippery Rock, and we could see a good old-fashioned upset in Greensburg. It might not be likely, but you never know.
Well, Seton Hill 2-0. They're now 2-1. They started 2-0. They're 2-1, and definitely surprising some teams. And, as we've both seen firsthand, once you get into divisional play, a lot can happen because it's a lot of old-time rivalries. But we're almost out of time here, speaking of time. But, Colin, tell people where they can watch and keep track of the Frostburg State game this weekend.
Well, if you want to keep track and watch her, you can head over to frostburgsports.com. There'll be live links. There'll only be audio this week as we are on the road, and there'll be a link to 99.5 WDZN Cumberland should you want to follow along audio with myself. And, of course, we'll be back here live on the Bobcat Sports Network next week for UNCP when they make their way up here for a home one.
And also keep track of Cal U at Edinburgh this Saturday from Sox Harrison Stadium. The game will kickoff will be at noon. You can watch the game live on CTV Sports 1 on YouTube and also listen to 91.9 FM WCAL Power 92 and also the PSAC network. And also I know, Colin, the MEC network streams all the games in various sports. So if you're a fan of Division II athletics, there's no reason not to pay attention in this glorious digital age of sports broadcasting.
You've got a lot of choices. There's a lot of different games that you can watch, and picture-in-picture is a great thing. So you can watch just about as many games as you'd want.
I mean, I'm not a smart man, but I would say have the Frostburg State game on one computer and the Cal U game on the other computer, and you get the best of both worlds. And we'll try and keep track of what is going on everywhere in the Super Region 1. But, Colin, we'll talk to you next week, and we hope to see and hear all of you out there in the world. Hope you like what we're trying to do here, and if you have any ideas or suggestions, let us know. But we'll see you next week on the Regional Roundup.